Hello, welcome back. This is our second week and we are discussing The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. This is something we've been looking at, or will be looking at, over the next year, 18 months.
On and off.
On and off, yeah. I'm kind of doing it in sections, aren't we? Doing like, I think
a few weeks, and then do something else, and we'll come back and do a bit more.
And we introduced it last week, and it was really interesting, some of your feedback in terms of the work that took place, or the conversations that took place in the Connect groups, which is where kind of the depth of this book kind of is kind of met. We kind of missed out a chapter though, haven't we, this week? Okay,
yeah. So the first week, last week, we were looking at hurry and it being the great enemy of our spiritual lives, and how we do hurry and how that affects us and how it affects our lives. And then chapter 2. They're very short chapters, but chapter 2, John Mark Comer calls A Brief History of Speed, and it's really fascinating. We're not
it's really fascinating.
It's really interesting. We're not going to talk to you about that today, but what we really want is actually for you to get a copy of the book and read it for yourself. It's not long, but it's really fascinating. So there were two things that really stood out for me, like that he talks about the brief history of speed, starting with the Romans and the sundial.
Which is funny,
and that there was a...
So why was that? What was the point of the sundial? I thought...
Well, because they were trying to, mark the hours and say when people should be doing things and when they should be here and when they should be there and how long they had to work.
Okay, so now you have a start-finish.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you could hold people to account for, X, Y, Z. And there was a Roman poet called Plautus, and he wrote this whole poem about, confound the man who thought of the sundial and carved my day up. And you're like, man, that's like, 2,500 years ago. Yeah. And yet when that first kind of, carving of the day into time started, it was a really big deal for people, because they were like, oh no, I don't want this. This isn't a positive thing. And now we look at, how we are today. And there was another thing about, before Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, the average number of hours that people slept was 11 hours. Wouldn't that be beautiful? 11 hours sleep. I would love 11 hours sleep.
11 hours sleep. Gosh, that's...
But then the light bulb was invented.
And then it all reduced.
Yeah, because they could stay up late and they could make people work late in factories and, get up early and work in the darkness because they've got light bulbs. And so suddenly it was like, now we can hurry, we can do more, we can be more efficient. But actually... Well,
I guess it increases the number of hours where you get to do more stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not necessarily a good thing. And I think, lots of these things like, technology and everything, we look at as progress. But actually, John Mark Comer is making the point that we need to really assess whether they are progress or not. And he talks about our iPhones or just smartphones in general.
I'm sure I don't touch it as much as it says on this thing.
I know, it's really fascinating.
Tell me what number it was saying.
Let me just see where that was, because I have now lost it.
So it was saying...
so the average iPhone user or smartphone user touches his or her phone 2,617 times a day.
So if you think about your phone, how many times do you touch it, do you think, during the day? In relation to this, and it's even more if you're a millennial, I have to say.
Yeah, it's supposed to be double if you're a millennial.
Sorry about
that. But yeah, it's just really fascinating, and it's really challenging as well.
I really struggle.
I know, I check my emails all the time and, check school WhatsApps and all sorts of things. But he says, if you grow dependent on your smartphone, it becomes a magical device that silently shouts your name at your brain all the time, which I think is really true. But he ends this chapter with this question to us, okay? So his question is, what is this doing to our souls? So it's all very well being more efficient, more fast, being able to do more, being able to do more with our phones, being able to do more in the day, everything else. Thing, yeah. But actually, is it a good thing? What is it doing to our souls and our spiritual lives with God? So we're going to move on to the next chapter now, which is where he starts to talk about something is deeply wrong. So we talked about hurry, we know about speed, but something is deeply wrong. James.
So in the book, this is basically, he sets his book into 3. And this is the first area is about the problem. So this is the problem of hurry. So this is the 3rd chapter of the
section on
the
why is it a problem, yeah.
And it's really interesting because he introduces this element of there being actually a disease. Psychologists and mental health professionals are now talking about the epidemic of the modern world, which is hurry sickness. And they label it as a disease.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting when you think about that. So the definitions that he brings up to are a behavioural pattern characterised by continual rushing and anxiousness. Like, you think of how it was just before coming on.
Yeah.
It was like, Catherine, I can't, we need to stop talking and just carry on. Anyway, and so then it's like the behaviour elements of our hurry. So I think when you look at this third chapter, it's really interesting that Mark puts in a little caveat which says, reject any guilt or shame you're feeling right now. It's not helpful. It's ready from God and definitely not on the agenda of the exercise. And I think that's really important when you reflect.
That's not what it's about.
Because when you look at it, you go, that's probably most of us. So he talks about 10 symptoms of hurry sickness. And I can look at this and go, So anyway, so here we go. So irritability.
Yeah, and he sort of gives you kind of like a description of what.
So if you go and look at the book, you get
having the book with you when you do it in Connect Group will be really helpful because it's not just the word. It's like, well, I'm not irritable, but then you sort of read the description and you're like, oh yeah, actually maybe I'm irritable at times.
Hypersensitivity, restlessness, workaholism, and that's not just workaholism as in work, but it's also
it's
activity.
Just being busy, constantly doing things. Yeah.
Emotional numbness, out of order priorities. A lack of care for your body, escapist behaviours, slippage of spiritual disciplines, and isolation. Yeah. Which are all really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I know that I have to say I can sometimes become irritable, and I definitely find myself trying to escape into certain things, whether it be Age of Empires, a game, or it could be really
West Wing over and over again.
Anything like that.
I know. Well, so one of the ththings that he talks about with one of these symptoms is this idea of sunset fatigue, which really jumped out at me, which was like you're so busy during the day and you don't give yourself any kind of space that by the time you kind of get to the evening you've got nothing left for your kids or for your spouse.
That's so true.
And I know that I'm there at the moment, to be honest, because I just feel the days I'm just worn out. And for some of us there's different circumstances around that, and there's shift work and there's different things, but actually it's just this idea of like constantly being on the go so much that you just haven't got anything left to kind of love the people that you love. And and I found that was like, I was like, I need to build in some some space in my day somehow.
Well, as we talked about last week, our dishwasher is still broken.
Yeah.
And it has been a place where even this week we've managed to have conversations while doing the dishes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I know that so our youngest is about to start school, so I'm about to go from having all the children for 6 months and not having a minute space to having lots of time. Yeah. But I know that there's a real danger that I'll just fill it up with doing things like the whole house needs, just attention. And there's work that I want to get done and need to get done, and there's people that I want to see, and this kind of thing. And I'm like, well, they're not wrong things to do. No. But actually, if I have made myself so busy all day long and not had a break and not, I don't know, like he's going to talk to us about what the answer is next week, but if I've not left myself any space, I'm just going to end up in the same position of being exhausted every night, and that's not helpful. So
it's really, I find it really hard because I like things to be finished. So it's really, if you'll go through the day and suddenly you've got to a point where it's getting into the evening and I feel like I need to finish something to be published. There's always that temptation to continue.
You stay up too late doing it. Definitely. So I think one of the things that he sort of comes to in this chapter is this idea of what we give our attention to. So he sort of like reflects on the whole thing, like the iPhone and stuff.
He makes a quote.
Like that they are basically, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are designed to steal your attention. Like literally, he quotes people in the book who are like, we just designed it to see how distracting we could make our program. And you're like, whoa, and that we're distracted all the time. So we're too distracted to really be aware of God.
Yeah.
And so he talks about attention.
It does. Well, he makes this point. The thing is, this for me is quite a massive quote because it's quite a challenging quote. Because this is on page 54. What you give your attention to is the person you become.
Yeah.
So if I'm distracted and I'm not giving my attention to God, and I'm not focused on what He's doing, then
maybe just spending time with Him.
And if it's on Facebook or social media, then I'm going to become more like what's happening and more the things I'm looking at, rather than actually the one person that I want to become, and who knows me more than anything else.
And I love how he talks about where Jesus says, where your treasure is where your heart will be also. And he says, our hearts follow our treasure. And often when we look at that verse in the Bible, we think he's talking about, we sort of look at time and money, and they are really big resources and treasures that we have. And it's not wrong to think about where are we putting our time and our money in terms of our treasure. But he says, probably even a bigger treasure that we all have to give or to spend is our attention. And actually, he quotes a poet who says, attention is the beginning of devotion. And actually, if our attention is constantly on our phone or on our to-do list or something else, then that's where our devotion is. But actually, if we're saying we want to devote our lives to God, then our attention, we have to look at where our attention is.
That's quite interesting. So read that quote, that point about the devotion and the attention thing.
Attention is the beginning of devotion.
So potentially, if my devotion is to my phone, it's actually my idol. That's what I'm worshipping.
Yeah, and it's your treasure. And Jesus is saying, where your treasure is, your heart will follow. And we want our hearts to be for Jesus, but actually we can be distracted so easily by things that look really good and are supposed to be really helpful in our lives and make our life easier. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it makes us any more devoted to Jesus. It just makes us more devoted to the things that are...
And some of those aren't necessarily our fault. It's just the culture is running so fast.
Yeah, and things are designed to steal our attention.
So unless we're aware of that, we'll probably find it quite challenging. Anyway, so that's chapter 3.
Yeah.
If you, we're just going to be inundated by our younger daughter in a minute. Just stay there for a minute. If as you go through it, you have some questions, come into our Connect groups, could be involved in the conversation. It's a great place to be, and it's interesting hearing other people's opinions and what's going on with them in their lives. And hopefully, as we journey through this together, we will change the way that we look at the rush of our lives and what comes in and the things that we're distracted to.
Why God is just wanting to come into all of that and put our attention on Him. But again, just to reiterate, there isn't supposed to be any guilt. Like, we've read this and gone, oh, this is us, or this is us. But, God's not putting guilt on us. We're not putting guilt on each other. It's just actually like that whole thing of awareness, that we're wanting to be more aware of God in our lives and wanting to be more like Him, wanting to really follow Him and follow His way.
It comes back to that thing about being the apprentice.
Yeah.
And Jesus' way of doing life.
Yeah, and the yoke, and it being Jesus has this way of doing life that's just easier, full stop. It doesn't need us to have a 2-week holiday, although they're great. But yeah, to live Jesus' way and do it His way. So
cool.
Great. Enjoy. Please get the book if you haven't. We're going to put the links up. If you can't afford it, please let us know. We'd love to give you one from church. And we hope that you are really enjoying it together in your Connect groups.
See you later.
Bye.
Hi guys, it's so good to have you this morning, whether it be on Facebook or on Zoom. We are Hemel Vineyard Church, and we're just doing life together as we follow Jesus. If you want to be part of that journey, then feel free to come and join us, whether it be on Zoom, again on Facebook next week, or drop us a line and have a conversation with us. We'd love to hear from you. Another place you can find out what's going on would be to check out our website, which is www.hemelvineyard.org.uk. I pray this week that you would know Jesus' love and His presence with you in whatever you face. See you next week. Bye.